might be ashamed of. All of us are welcome here, and all of us are loved. Some of us already have open hearts, and some of us aren't quite there yet because our hearts have gotten a little beaten up this week and might have forgotten how to trust and open. Your heart is welcome here, no matter how bruised. We welcome you among us. All of us are imperfect, but we're here to drop our defenses and trust that what happens in worship is powerful and life-giving. Together, we affirm that this day and our being together can make each of us braver, more compassionate, and wiser than when we woke up this morning. We welcome you here. I call your attention to the announcements that are printed on the back of the order of service. Oh, there are some today. Please read these for important information about fellowship life. Spoken announcements will be heard at the end of the hour. On behalf of the members of the fellowship, I extend a special welcome to all visitors who are joining us for the first time, and those of you who still feel like visitors. If you have not already done so, please add your name to the visitor sign-in sheet at the greeters table, or visit AUUF.org/visitor. You may also contact our minister, Reverend Chris Rothbauer, at minister@AUUF.org with any questions or concerns you may have. As we prepare for our service this morning, please remember to turn your phone and other electronic devices to silent. Let us move into the service willing to be authentic with each other, honest within ourselves, and open to connection in all its forms.
Woke up, fell out of bed, dragged a comb across my head. Found my way downstairs and drank a cup, and looking up, I noticed I was late. Found my coat and grabbed my hat, made the bus in seconds flat. Found my way upstairs and had a smoke, and somebody spoke, and I went into a dream.
Summertime has turned the
We light our chalice this morning with these words from Hermann Hesse.
This is from Siddhartha. Searching means having a goal, but finding means being free, being open, having no goal.
As is our tradition, we also light a candle in solidarity with those families separated at our southern border. One of the ways that we proclaim the warmth and caring of our community is by sharing our joys, concerns, and milestones. We invite you to, one at a time, drop a pebble into our communal bowl during the music for meditation. If you have a spoken joy, concern, or milestone, I invite you to come forward one at a time and briefly share it at the microphone.
It's my birthday and I'm turning 6.
Are we invited to the party?
Yeah.
Last weekend, I played Firebird and pictures at an exhibition with Columbus Symphony. And then the following Sunday, I started to rehearse to play, among other things, Brahms Symphony No. 1 with the LaGrange Symphony, where I'm concertmaster, and I survived.
I'm Richard Shelby. This is
Rodriguez.
We Have a Joy. This time next week, next Sunday, about this time, we won't be here.
Because
We will be on our way to catch a train in Birmingham to do a whirlwind tour of the East Coast. First, stopping in Washington, D.C. to visit my daughter, then on to New York City
to Riverside, where my daughter and family live. We'll be gone for
until the 13th.
yes.
So try to get along without us.
Hey, I'm Andrew, and last Saturday, and I went to the 38th annual Surrender in the Mountains NA convention, and it was up the Cheaha State Park, and it's the highest place in Alabama, 2,000 something, and it was so it was way cool. It was like I had heard about it, and was invited several times, and I could finally make it. You know, camping out or sleeping on rocks. You know, and it was like, so that was really good. That was the Narcotics Anonymous convention. So a nice segue into that is we've got 3 copies of Addiction in Your Faith Community. I borrowed this one, I had read it, and it's way cool. And because the stuff it's you know, if you've been here in this family, you know some of what can happen. You think it's like, okay, it's somebody else, or it's Tom Petty, or it's the other person that OD'd, or what does it mean? But I know folks, like the Reverend Diana's son. She was so concerned about him, and my teammate in RE, Lisa, she was so concerned about her older son, you know. And, so it's kind of like, well, man, what do you do? So there's cool stuff in it. Hey, that's what it is.
Probably after church, I get to go and ride my bike all the way to one of my friends' houses, which is very far away from my house. But yeah, and also my birthday's coming up, and I get to have a giant Nerf battle.
Yeah,
it's gonna be a lot of fun.
Hi, I'm Martha. I've got one of those bad news, good news things. The bad news is that Wednesday I found out my right foot broke in the same place the left one had. The good news is it's actually healing. The other good news is I want to thank the people in the choir who have been coming ever since all this fun stuff with the masks and all. You've been wonderful, and I really appreciate it, and I know everybody else does too. I miss everybody that is normally part of our choir, so hopefully this stuff's gonna go away if everybody gets vaccinated, hint, hint. So that's it.
Yeah.
Thank you to all who shared their joys, concerns, and milestones this morning. May all the joys, concerns, and milestones of this community, those shared aloud and those held in silence, be received into the care and concern of all present. We're glad to be able to have a moment for all ages today, with all young people and those young at heart. So if you have a pacemaker, does that count as young at heart? Please come down to the front of the fellowship. Come on down.
Oh, he's first. Good morning. Holy guacamole, look how many we are. So many friends. I'm so excited. So I wonder, can we close our eyes for just a minute and just imagine all of our favorite things in life? What are some of the things we love the most? Just close your eyes and think about it. And if you're willing to share with all of us, us. I wonder if somebody might tell us one or two things that they really, really love about life.
Sour candy and books.
Sour candy and books, me too. Same thing. Anybody else want to share?
Free bird.
Free bird. Same.
So.
What do you love about life?
I love that there are no more dinosaurs and dragons that could hurt someone.
Yeah, that's probably pretty good. That works out for us, doesn't it? Not so much for them, but it's really good for us that there are no dragons and dinosaurs. What you got, Owen?
What I like about life Michael Jackson and lemonade.
Michael Jackson and lemonade. Good choices, solid choices up here, Malcolm.
Horses.
Horses, also a solid choice. Thank you all so much. I'm so grateful that you were willing to share all that with us. Did you know that just by talking about these things out loud and being aware of the things that you love about life, the things that you're grateful for, that you're feeding and strengthening the spirit of life within you, within our community. And this is the spirit of life that enlivens and infuses everything and is part of the interdependent web of all existence of which we are all a part, and that's one of our principles, right? And so the spirit of life, to me, is kind of like a force, like in Star Wars, right? It's like a power. There's something strong about it, but there's also something fragile about it. You've got to be real careful with it. Like glass, but more like, what I want to talk about today is more like balancing, but we can talk about it being like glass too. So I would like a little bit of help exploring it. There are a lot of you, so we might have to share. Do you want to pick one? Oh, look. Okay, what I would like you to try to do is try to see if you can balance it on one finger. Just one finger.
I did it.
Look at that. Some of you have this balancing thing down. And
whenever I'm at school, I do it with pencils when I'm bored.
So that...
I don't even practice. I just hate this one. Yeah.
If you're having trouble with one finger, you can try two fingers, or forget, Penelope has found a way to do it. Everybody finds their own trick to achieving balance. Now try it with your eyes closed. It's pretty simple, huh? All right, it gets a little trickier to keep your balance when you have your eyes closed. Now, I would, let's see, can we get a little bit together so that our sticks might touch one another? Let's see if that affects our balance at all. A little bit, right? It gets a little bit trickier when you try to get, when you try to take other things into consideration. So that's like the interdependent web of all existence. Everything is closely intertwined and balanced with one another. And if one thing loses balance, it causes the others to lose balance as well, right? And we're fortunate to be able to choose to live and act with awareness of our spirit and with the mindfulness of the delicate balance of which we are all a part. So, I know, he's right there, but he's safe. And so this morning, both of our paid child care providers are not here today. So we are going to do something a little bit different this morning. I brought in puzzles, because I know somebody likes puzzles an awful lot, and some crayons and some paper. And you can come to the back with me and hang out, and we can do some art. Or you can go by your parents if you want, that's fine too. And we're gonna stay real quiet and respectful, right? You can keep your sticks, but you cannot hit someone with it. Deal? All right.
Abracadabra.
Abracadabra.
Abracadabra, your head is now a pear.
You can still sing them off just to the back. No, this way.
I probably should go get Kira.
Bring it back over. One in the back.
It's different this time,
Our reading today is from chapter 1 of the Tao Te Ching by Lao Tzu.
If you remember the quote I did with Siddhartha about searching means having a goal, but finding means being free, being open, having no goal, this is really a good example of that. You know, try to find something, and then, chapter 1, right? Best thing you can do. The Tao that can be described is not the eternal Tao. The name that can be spoken is not the eternal name. The nameless is the boundary of heaven and earth. The named is the mother of creation. Free from desire, you can see the hidden mystery. By having desire, you can only see what is visibly real. Yet mystery and reality emerge from the same source. This source is called darkness. Darkness born from darkness, the beginning of all understanding.
The offering that we take each Sunday isn't just a stale habit. It's an opportunity to recommit to this place and to each other. Our offering is an affirmation, a yes. When we give, we say yes to something we value. With our gifts freely given, may we say yes to the values of our faith. May our offering help us practice Unitarian Universalism within and beyond our congregation as tools to empower our mission. To make a donation online via PayPal, please visit auuf.org/donate. If you're writing a check, please make your check payable to AUUF with a note on the memo line about whether it is for the offering or your pledge, and drop it in the offering bowl or mail it to Post Office Box 669, Auburn, Alabama 36831. The offering will now be gratefully received. Thank you, Lorna. It was beautiful and probably caused people to give more money than they might have otherwise. Our program today centers on AUUF members and friends' experiences of awakening, broadly defined, from social life to politics to the spiritual. I would like to invite Sylvia Rogers to speak first.
Hello, everybody. I'm Sylvia. When I was pondering about this, I realized I had never had one of those giant, like, oh, awakening type moments, more maybe smaller type awakening moments. But you can read about them in books, and you can experience those awakenings by those characters. And so I was like, well, maybe I've got something there, because I do like to read a lot. When I was in college the first time, I was a Russian major, read a lot of Tolstoy. And there was a particular smaller book, he did write smaller novels, by the way, in case you didn't know. There was a particular one called The Death of Ivan Ilyich. And this character had an incredible awakening. And I highly recommend this book. And basically he was a magistrate. He spent his life as a social climber, achieved some professional bureaucracy type job, had a wife that was appropriate for his station, had the appropriate amount of children, and thought he was just a great guy, and he'd do everything that he was supposed to do. As he was still a fairly young guy, he became ill, and it was, as it turns out, it was a terminal illness, and he was bedbound and in terrible pain, constant pain, and he was very upset about that because he's thinking, what have I done to deserve this? Nothing. I've lived my life as I should be living. And it just got worse and worse, and he was angry with his family because they were avoiding him because they didn't know what to do. The only two people were his very young son, who cried a lot, sat by his bed and cried a lot, and a lowly servant who would take care of him. He couldn't eat or clean himself or do anything, anymore. And so, as things just kept getting worse and worse, he felt like he was in a black sack and he couldn't get out. And he's just in agonizing pain, and he's probably flailing around, and his head kind of came into contact with his young son. And at that moment, he had this spiritual awakening. And he realized that, in fact, he had lived an inauthentic, artificial life. He had no spiritual anything. His whole life had been spent chasing like a paper dream. And he had had no real human interaction to speak of. And at that moment, when he realized that, and he had this authentic moment with his young son who was crying, and he also realized that the other person was this lowly servant that had been taking care of him just because he wanted to, not because that was part of his job. And so he felt at that moment like he came out of this dark sack, and he felt like he'd been on a train that he thought he was going forward, but in fact had been going backward. And so I read that, and I was like walking out of my dorm room, staggering, and I looked around, and everybody was just going along with their lives as though nothing had happened, because nothing actually did happen. It's all in my head. But I realized that, people can have these moments where you can appreciate what a literature can do for you. And so even though maybe it wasn't my spiritual awakening, I thought about that, and I've thought about that book for decades. And so when we thought about this, I thought I would share about that particular book. Thank you. And I think Herb was supposed to be here, but I don't believe he is, so I think we're gonna... Is he?
We'll get some people up and down.
Okay, I'll let Peter take over. Thank you.
So, before I do this, is Herb out there? Maybe hiding under a chair or something. Anyway, Herb was going to be our next speaker, but he's elsewhere. And when Chris Basgier put upon me to be the service associate for today, and he said, "Oh, it's about awakening." I was a little bit crestfallen, and why would I be crestfallen there? Well, we have, this is a plug now, we have covenant groups or small groups, small group ministry of few people that get together every 2 weeks on Zoom and try to take a crack at some kind of deeper or mysterious or difficult concept and sort of toss it around according to semi-strict rules, and which actually turns out to be a good thing. So it turns out our last covenant group was on the topic of awakening. And it didn't go so well for me because I just wasn't there. I just didn't get into it and couldn't think of much of an awakening. And compared to other covenant groups that we had, which were kind of home runs out of the ballpark, this one was sort of a bunt that went foul. Chris said to me, he said, "Well, if anything goes wrong, maybe you should think of some awakening experience that you've had that you could fill in." And of course I haven't. But I'll share with you the awakening experience, the pseudo-awakening experience that I had, that I shared with the group. And it's really kind of super trivial. I was in college, and I was young and immature. Now I'm old and immature, but then I was young and immature and was worried about things which were not that monumental, among which was, how to meet girls. And there I was on the 125th Street subway platform waiting for the A train, and I was sort of lost in thought. And the train came into the station, it slowed down, and it stopped with a screech of brakes. And what I found myself standing in front of was the gap between two cars, the car to the left, car to the right. And I had to go one way or another to get on the train. And like the young idiot that I was, I said to myself, gee, if I go one way, I might just get in a subway car and nothing happened. But if I went to the other train car, I might see a girl, talk to her, my young mind at work, and it could change the course of my life. And the choice would have been perfectly random, no reason to go to one car or another. And at that point, I realized that a lot of life happens as the result of random choices, of pure luck, dumb luck. And that did, I didn't meet any girls on that train, or any train for that matter. Probably arrest you if you got too aggressive. But throughout the rest of my life, I found that I was quite content to leave decisions, sometimes even major decisions, to the flip of a coin. And maybe things worked out better, maybe not, but it was an element of the world that I came to appreciate that day in the subway. And So that's the story. The perhaps positive outcome of my telling this story is that I'm next to invite people in the audience, maybe one or two, as time permits, to get up here and tell an even better story, which won't be hard to do. And then we'll finish up with our third participant who we all prepared something for today's service. So if anybody wants to tell about an awakening in their life, please come forward.
I'm Ralph, and the thing that was an awakening for me was one day I was at the Winn-Dixie, it's not there anymore, on University Drive, standing in the checkout line, and as I was waiting for the person in front of me to get their groceries checked out, I found myself face to face with the rack of magazines and tabloids. And there was one of them, one of these really rag tabloids, one of the ones they keep on hand to make the Sun and Inquirer look respectable. And there was a headline on it. How to find your loved ones when you get to heaven. 7 ways that are guaranteed to work. I had never worried about how to find my loved ones when I got to heaven before. I figured in the unlikely event I got there, if I had forever, they couldn't avoid me that long. So apparently somebody's worried about this sort of thing, but I was talking about the 7 ways guaranteed to work. And of course, the rhetorical question came to mind, if I'm already dead, what kind of guarantee can they make that this thing worked? And I thought I was asking myself a rhetorical question, but then an answer came to me. They could make as good a guarantee as any denomination can make regarding their ability to get me there in the first place, or for that matter, as good as the guarantee any denomination can make that there is in fact a there to be gotten to. And at that point, I still wasn't aware of the Unitarian Universalist denomination, but at that point, my chances of becoming a functioning member of any other denomination vanished.
Test 1, 2. So, hi, my name is Jason, and I want to share some data points with you from, I guess, my life experience. So I remember when I was 20 years old, for the first time in my life, I came across some Christians that were really into their faith. It was my grandparents. And at the time, I was like a 5% Christian. I really didn't care much about it, but I kind of grew up in the church. And I heard all these wild missionary stories that they would tell, how God would show up and do this and do that. And I always wondered, why did God always do things over there, not here? But anyway, I remember though, that my step-grandpa prayed that I be baptized in the Holy Spirit. Now, taking Christian theology out of that, I did actually have an experience. I had a spiritual experience that changed me forever. Sometimes for the good, sometimes for the bad. And then, if you know anything about Pentecostal theology, you're supposed to speak in other tongues at that moment too, which didn't happen, much to the chagrin of my grandparents. But that did have a profound effect on me for the rest of my life. I had a spiritual encounter, it would seem, with an outside force, whatever that may be. However, as my wife reminds me, although that kind of made me a good person in some ways, it made me very judgmental. So I'd say my second awakening beyond that is being married, because a spouse can really clean up your judgments and your beliefs. And I would say the third spiritual awakening for me is dealing with illness and disease, which has been a great awakening experience for me. So there you have it.
But I'll do it. So, getting here was kind of an interesting story because when I first came here, it was with an artist group and we had a sale here. And so then I came back on a Sunday and I met Ken Walters, who became my husband of, God, was it 20 years or so? But anyway, if I hadn't happened to come here and hadn't started talking to him that morning, I might not be here right now. I'd be at home asleep or having coffee.
So, probably one of my biggest awakening moments is not necessarily religious, unless whatever denomination you are focuses a lot on the self. So I, especially as a child, used my imagination more than I would do anything else. And so I had one moment where, as a kid, you're playing around an empty void, and then it suddenly opened up, and I was just in an entire landscape that, an entire map had just popped into my head, where before there had been nothing. Now there was something filled with people, filled with animals, filled with plants that had resources. And the moment that it went from nothing to everything just meant everything to me. I hope I explained that well. That's very vague.
I had another somewhat humorous but profound awakening in a professional sense. I taught organic chemistry in a former life, and there are parts of organic chemistry, some might say all of it, that are a little bit difficult for students to grasp, and the worst among them is stereochemistry. And I was giving a lecture that day on stereochemistry, and I was trying my hardest to explain it clearly. I was thinking of these great examples, I thought, but it just wasn't. It was a 2 o'clock class. Never teach a class at 2 o'clock. But anyway, everyone's falling asleep. And the class ended, and I left the room thinking, oh God, that was just terrible. I think I'll have to go back over this in the next class period. It was really, I failed at my task. I'm walking down the hall thinking this, and this kid comes running up behind me and says, Dr. LeBan, Dr. LeBan. I turned around and said, yeah. I said, that was the best lecture I've ever heard in my life. Thank you. And then I realized, just get up there and teach. Anyway, the third scheduled speaker is none other than our very own C.J. Marvin.
Good morning. And yeah, I so agree with what Peter says. You know, you get up here and sometimes you talk for a little ways. You're convinced you're leaving a lot of blank staring, just glassy-eyed people in your wake. And somebody comes up to you afterwards and just says, hey, thank you, that was a great talk. And you're like, wow, you know, go figure. So I guess the answer is, I don't know what I'm doing up here. I was also kind of curious when I found out that the theme this month was awakening. It's one of those difficult concepts to grok sometimes. In India and in the Dharmic religions that came out of it, awakening was this potential for living things to understand how the universe works. Not just in some vague theoretical sense, but in the sense of who wins the World Series in 2038. These beings are not thought to be all powerful, but you don't want to play poker with one of them either. I suspect for us youths, awakening means something a little bit more mundane, like awakening to the needs of others, awakening to our own delusions, and just awakening to the fact that on a personal level, I, CJ, or you, Peter, we're not the center of the universe. Sorry, Peter. You know, if you haven't guessed, I've been kayaking a lot this summer. I shouldn't say guess, just check a Facebook status. I talked about it way too much. I even found this hat in Lake Martin. It's a pretty good hat. Out on the water, I keep seeing these signs. It says, no wake zone. I cannot resist a good pun. Sorry. Of course, they're talking about waves in places where people might be fishing or swimming. But again, I can't resist a good pun. And I think that those of us who adopt awakening as our destination really need no wake zones of our own. Spaces in which to care for each other, spaces in which to build beloved community, spaces to take the pressure off of trying to pull ourselves up into enlightenment by our bootstraps. This just doesn't work. We forget that each morning when we wake up, unless you have an alarm clock, in which case you have my condolences, but for the rest of us, when we wake up in the morning, it's just something natural that happens. There's a real danger that we miss the mark entirely when we make enlightenment into an object. We become so fixated on ourselves that we're like the guy in the Onion article that you may have read, in which after just 40 minutes of meditating in the morning, he finds he has enough mental focus and mindfulness to completely ignore the needs of people around him. Yeah, we go there sometimes. Perhaps instead of thinking of awakening as something we attain, it's better to think of it as an ongoing process of just removing ever more subtle forms of ignorance, hatred, egotism, pride, etc. Again, we need space in which to focus on each other. And probably ironically, but I'm not sure because I'm an American and I don't get irony, but this makes awakening far more attainable than when we objectify it. I also grew Seminole pumpkins this year. You may have seen those on Facebook as well. It's an heirloom variety of squash that has been grown for literally thousands of years here in Alabama. It helped feed the Muskogee Creek people that we refer to in our opening words every year. And these Muskogee people knew what every farmer knows, that if you want squash, you have to plant squash seeds. No one has ever grown a squash by planting tomato seeds. It just doesn't happen. And the lesson is quite simple. If you want love, plant the seeds of love. If you want peace, plant the seeds of peace. And if you want awakening, whatever that looks like to you, plant the seeds of awakening. Thank you.
Thanks to everyone who shared their stories of awakening. Our closing hymn is number 298 in the Great Hymnal, which I guess certain select members of the gathered mass here will sing. Please join me in extinguishing our chalice with the words in your program. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again. Please be our guest today after the service for coffee hour, which might provide another awakening. This is an opportunity to check in with folks about the service and how the week has gone. If you're not signed up for our email list, please make sure you do so to receive updates about ways to connect. You can find information on signing up at our website, auuf.org/subscribe. If you have an announcement, please feel free to come forward one at a time. We would like to ask you, please be brief in your announcement.
Hi, I'm Amy, and this is Laura, and we're going to be having a table up here to encourage all of you who would like to help prepare our altar for next week, the animal blessing, to come up and with all the supplies we'll have here, make silhouettes of animal footprints. We had a real good group of folks do it last week, and we have the same supplies and are encouraging folks to come up and do that. And I have a huge apology. In spite of signing up on the sign-up sheet and getting a Sign-Up Genius reminder, I absolutely totally forgot to bring half and half and a snack today for coffee. Oh, I know. So I hope there's half and half of freshness. Thank you, Ralph. And did you bring any cookies or anything? No, because, well, oh, they're leftover donuts, so, oh, all is well. Yay, thank you.
Hey, my name's Billy. I've got a few things. One is that next Friday, Friday after next, October 7th, we are setting up a trans social. So for folks who are trans, non-binary, gender non-conforming, a few folks in the community and I are working to set that up at Ross House Coffee. So the evening of Friday the 7th. Friday the 14th is the startup of UU Game Night over in the Bush Center. So if you're interested, board game night, board game card games. So if you're interested, that's going to be the second Friday of the month, starting in October. We haven't set a time. 6:30 maybe. Well, we'll send out an email. And one other thing, we have a board meeting coming up soon, and something that I'm looking at as VP of Finance is to spread the word about our fellowship through NPR and Troy Public Radio. They have spots for $25 a piece, and I'm going to look at some board discretionary money. But I'm also wondering how many folks out here already support NPR, and if you do, would you be willing to trade your coffee cup or other reward for spreading the word about our fellowship? If you are, please get in touch with me. I'd love to have a robust proposal to bring to the board meeting. Thanks.
Please join us now for our song benediction, Maestro. Our closing words are from Atticus Finch in Harper Lee's To Kill a Mockingbird. You never really understand a person until you consider things from his point of view, until you climb into his skin and walk around in it. Or drink coffee.